All right, so strap yourselves in, folks. We are diving deep today, going where few have dared to go before.
Into the heart of the dragon, perhaps.
Well, maybe not that dramatic, but yeah, we're tackling all the hype about China's alleged sixth-generation fighter jet.
Ah, yes, the mysterious White Emperor.
Exactly. You've seen the headlines, the speculation, the whole shebang. But today, we're going to cut through the noise, figure out what's really going on.
Should be interesting. Lots to unpack.
Totally. And to help us on this quest, we've got 3 awesome YouTube videos. Each one brings a different angle to the table. We've got a defense expert breaking things down, another diving deep into the tactical side of things, and then one that pulls back to look at the whole geopolitical landscape.
So a nice 360-degree view.
Yep. So what are we trying to accomplish with this deep dive? Well, first off, what do we actually know about this jet? Like, is it real? Is it vaporware? What's the deal?
Good question. Always a good starting point.
Then we got to figure out, how does it stack up against those American behemoths, the F-22s, the F-35s, the whole gang?
Apples to oranges, maybe? Or apples to futuristic laser beams. Who knows?
Ha! That's what we're here to find out. And finally, and this is a big one, what does this mean for India?
Yeah, that's a big one. Can't ignore that angle.
So let's kick things off with that White Emperor reveal, shall we?
Oh, yeah, that was something else.
You see that diamond-shaped design they showed in the Binkov's Battlegrounds video? I mean, come on, it looks straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, compare that to your classic F-22 or F-35. It's like they're not even playing the same game.
Totally different beast. And that's what's so mind-blowing, that the print video really hammered on this point. How are the Chinese suddenly so far ahead in this whole 6th-gen race?
It's a puzzle, that's for sure.
Like, are they pulling some crazy 4D chess move while the rest of us are playing checkers? Or is this a masterful bluff, all smoke and mirrors designed to make everyone else panic?
Ah, good old propaganda. Never underestimate its power.
The print even suggested that, right? That maybe they're just trying to psych everyone out.
Which honestly would be a pretty smart move. Just the idea of a super advanced Chinese fighter jet, even if it's not fully baked yet, could shift the balance of power.
Food for thought. But, okay, before we go any further, I gotta be honest, this whole generation thing with fighter jets?
Yeah, it gets confusing.
It totally does. I mean, what actually makes a jet 6th gen? Is it just like extra stealthy? What's the secret sauce here?
It's a great question. And you're right, it goes way beyond just slapping on some stealth coating and calling it a day.
So break it down for us.
Well, that group captain from the print video had a really neat way of explaining it. He laid out this framework called the 5 S's.
5 S's? Sounds kind of mysterious, like a secret code.
Ha! It kind of is. But a code to understanding next-level air power.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
He talked about survivability, supercruise, supermaneuverability, sensor fusion, and situational awareness. Each one is crucial to making a truly 6th-gen fighter.
Okay, 5 big words, but what do they actually mean in a dogfight? Like, if I'm picturing those crazy scenes from Top 10, but with future tech, how do those S's come into play?
All right, so let's start with survivability. Basically, it's how good a jet is at not getting blown out of the sky.
So avoiding becoming a giant fireball, got it.
Precisely. And yes, stealth is a part of that, being hard to spot on radar. But it also involves those high-tech coatings and countermeasures that can jam enemy systems, like a high-flying chameleon that can scramble the other guy's vision.
So it's not just hiding, it's messing with their ability to find you. Clever girl.
Exactly. Now, how about supercruise? That sounds like something out of a video game. Is that a real thing?
Oh, it's real, and it's a total game changer. Basically, a jet that can cruise at supersonic speeds without guzzling fuel like crazy.
No more needing those afterburners all the time.
Exactly. We're talking about efficiency and speed. That means incredible range and staying power. It can stay in the fight longer, cover more ground, just generally be a nuisance for longer.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this 6th-gen thing is a big deal. But what about super maneuverability? Does that mean the jet can, like, dance circles around its opponents?
You're not far off. It's all about tight turns, crazy maneuvers, making the jet as agile as possible. Think of it like a high-stakes ballet in the sky.
Sounds graceful, but deadly.
Exactly. It's thanks to cutting-edge aerodynamics and this thing called thrust vectoring. Basically, the pilot can control the direction of the engine exhaust, making the jet incredibly nimble and hard to hit.
Like a hummingbird on steroids.
Huh, perfect analogy. All right, so we've got a jet that can seemingly vanish, fly super fast for ages, and pull off those crazy moves. What's next? Teleportation.
Maybe. But first, let's talk about sensor fusion. This is where it gets really futuristic.
Lay it on me.
So it's all about pulling in data from all sorts of sources. Radar, infrared, you name it. Even information shared from other aircraft. And then it fuses all that data into one clear picture for the pilot.
So like X-ray vision, night vision, and seeing through walls all at the same time.
You got it. total battlefield awareness. But now you're probably thinking, how does the pilot even process all that information without their head exploding?
Good point.
And that's where the last S's comes in, situational awareness. It's not just about having the data, it's about making sense of it in the chaos of battle.
So it's like having the world's most powerful computer, but with a pilot's brain making the decisions.
Exactly. With sensor fusion, the pilot knows what's happening all around them. They can spot threats sooner, target enemies more accurately, and make decisions in a heartbeat.
Wow, it's like giving a chess grandmaster the ability to see every possible move on the board all at once.
That's a great way to put it.
But here's the thing that's bugging me. All these S's sound amazing, but when you look at the White Emperor, there's one thing that just seems off.
What's that?
3 engines. Seriously, why not 2 or 4? Why the odd number? It just seems strange.
Yeah, even Binkov and Task and Puppis seemed a bit baffled by that one. Like they couldn't decide between a tricycle and a car.
Right. We haven't really seen a 3-engine fighter jet before, have we? What's the thinking there?
Well, there are a few theories floating around, some more out there than others. Binkov's video, for instance, suggested that maybe China is still trying to catch up in engine tech.
So they can't build 2 engines powerful enough for that beast.
That's what he's suggesting. Maybe they need that third one just to get the thing off the ground, like strapping an extra booster onto a rocket.
So compensating for a weakness makes sense, I guess. But is that the only theory?
Oh, no, there are a couple more. The print had a different take. They proposed that the third engine might be a tactical choice, only used for certain situations.
Like what?
Think high-altitude takeoffs, maybe from those air bases in the Himalayas, or for sustaining those supercruise speeds for really long stretches.
That's interesting, like having a special gear for extreme conditions.
Exactly. But then Task and Purpose threw a real curveball into the mix.
Ooh, do tell.
They pointed out that all those fancy future weapons, the lasers, the directed energy weapons, all that jazz, those things are power hungry.
Guzzle energy like nobody's business.
Yep. So maybe, just maybe, that third engine is all about providing the juice needed to run those systems.
Whoa, okay, so they're basically thinking, hey, let's throw in an extra engine just in case we need to zap something from space later. That's pretty wild. But, this whole discussion raises a big question for India. If China really is this far ahead, where does that leave them?
It's the question, isn't it? And the print didn't hold back. That group captain they interviewed, he painted a pretty sobering picture.
Uh-oh. What did he say?
He basically said India is facing a serious shortage of fighter squadrons. And when it comes to getting new jets, well,
it's a bureaucratic nightmare.
That's putting it mildly. Remember that 42 squadrons goal everyone keeps talking about? He basically said it's based on some random notes from the 1960s.
Seriously, that's kind of ridiculous, isn't it?
Totally. The world has changed a bit since then. That number is totally out of touch with today's reality.
So it sounds like India needs to hit the reset button on its entire fighter jet strategy. But what are their options? I mean, do they double down on those homegrown projects like the Tejas, or do they start shopping for jets from other countries?
That's the big debate, isn't it? Build or buy. The print really dug into the complexities of this. It's a tough choice, and it has implications for India's security moving forward.
This is getting intense. I think we need to pause here for a moment, take a breath, and let all this sink in. We've covered a lot of ground. Stealth tech, supersonic speeds, those 3-engine mysteries. But hold tight, because when we come back, we're tackling that big question. What should India do about its fighter jet dilemma? Okay, so we're back, and I'm sure everyone's wondering the same thing. If India has to buy new jets, who do they turn to?
It's a tough choice.
It is. I mean, is it France with those sleek Rafales, or do they go the Russian route with their, let's just say, robust fighters?
Yeah, each option's got its own pros and cons.
Definitely. So let's start with the Rafales. What are we looking at there?
Well, it's a known quantity, right? Already part of the Indian Air Force. The tech's solid, and Indian pilots have experience flying them.
So reliability and familiarity are big pluses there. But I can't help thinking about those political controversies a few years back with the Rafale deal. Are those still a factor?
Oh, for sure. They add a whole other layer of complexity to the situation. Plus, we got to factor in the cost. The Rafale is definitely a premium jet with a price tag to match. But at the end of the day, you're getting a proven platform.
True. Okay, so that's the French option. Now, what about those Russian fighters? They've got a reputation for being, well, how do we put this nicely?
A bit more rough around the edges.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. The group captain in the print video didn't mince words about this.
He was pretty straight up, wasn't he?
Totally. He basically said that while Russian jets are usually cheaper and readily available, they're often a step behind when it comes to the latest tech.
It's like choosing between a dependable old pickup truck and a fancy sports car.
I like that analogy. Both will get you where you need to go, but the ride's going to be completely different.
Exactly.
So it's a trade-off, right? With the Russian option, you might sacrifice some of the fancy stuff for affordability and availability. But Are there other downsides to think about? We can't ignore the current global situation.
Absolutely. Things have changed a lot since those 1960s squadron calculations.
No kidding.
Aside from the whole reliability question, there's that river of sanctions that could really mess with spare parts and support for those Russian jets. It's a gamble, no doubt about it.
So India's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, huh? No matter what they choose, there are going to be compromises.
That's the reality of the situation.
But before we spiral down the rabbit hole of procurement strategies, let's take a step back for a second. Are we all getting a little too excited about this white emperor? Is there a chance China's playing us all, pulling a fast one?
That's a great point, and the print brought that up too. China's no stranger to using their military to send a message.
Right. A little bit of saber rattling.
Exactly. They definitely know how to flex their muscles and keep their neighbors on edge.
So yeah, there's definitely a propaganda element here. But does that mean we should just write the whole thing off as a bluff? China's been building up their military like crazy. We can't ignore that.
No, you can't. And that's where Task and Purpose makes a really important point. They argue that even if we're getting ahead of ourselves about this specific jet, we can't ignore the sheer scale of their military production. They're pumping out ships and planes and missiles at a crazy rate.
It's kind of unsettling, to be honest.
It is. It really makes you think.
So it's not just about one fancy new jet. It's about the bigger picture.
Right. It's about the undeniable fact that China is becoming a serious military power. And that's something we all need to pay attention to.
No doubt about it. Even if the White Emperor turns out to be more hype than substance, the trend is clear.
And that trend is concerning, to say the least.
Absolutely. And Task and Purpose even share this anecdote from a U.S. military officer. I think he said something like, even if this new tech is only 80% as good as they claim, it's still going to be a problem.
Yeah, that puts things in perspective.
Big time. Okay, so after all this deep diving, where do we stand? What are the big takeaways here?
Well, first off, there are a lot of unknowns. We don't have the complete picture when it comes to the White Emperor. A lot of it is speculation and guesswork.
Sure, it's still early days.
It is. But even if this jet is years away from actually flying missions, it's a wake-up call for India.
A wake-up call in terms of, be specific, what needs to happen?
It's a wake-up call to modernize their Air Force. They need to figure out their procurement processes, make them more efficient, less bureaucratic, and they need a long-term strategy for dealing with a China that's showing no signs of slowing down.
So India's got to adapt, basically.
Exactly. They can't rely on outdated strategies and equipment.
It's a new world out there.
It is, and India's got to be ready to play the game.
It sounds like India has some tough decisions ahead.
They do, and those decisions will have a big impact, not just for India, but for the whole region.
Absolutely. This isn't just a regional issue. We've got global implications, and those implications are only going to get bigger as technology keeps advancing.
It's a whole new world of warfare.
All right, so we've covered a lot here. We've talked about fighter jet tech, the challenges facing India, and the shadow of China's military ambitions. But now let's turn it over to you, our listeners. Where do you fit into all this?
That's right. What can you do with all this information?
Well, first off, check out those YouTube videos we talked about. They're a great way to visualize all this stuff and hear different perspectives on this complicated issue.
They really give you that 360-degree view.
Exactly. And if you really want to go deep, that group captain from the print video had some excellent book recommendations.
Yeah, he did. Didn't he mention Bombing to Win?
He did. And Limits of Air Power and Bomber Mafia. Oh, and a recent one by Air Marshal Dendu that focuses specifically on Indian air power.
Those are all great resources if you want to understand the history of air power and the challenges facing India today.
So there you have it, folks. Visuals, analysis, and even some homework. But we don't just want to leave you with a bunch of information.
No, we want you to think about it, apply it.
Exactly. So here's a thought experiment for you. Imagine you're in charge of India's defense. What would your fighter jet strategy be?
What would you prioritize? Domestic production, a mix of homegrown and imported jets, or something else entirely?
It's a tough question.
It is, and there's no easy answer, but that's the point. These are complex issues.
But by understanding the nuances, by having these conversations, by being informed citizens, we can all help find the best path forward, not just for India, but for everyone.
Absolutely. It's about global security at the end of the day.
Well said. All right, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. Hopefully you found it informative, maybe even a little bit inspiring.
We hope so. It's a fascinating topic.
It really is. But this is just the beginning of the conversation, so keep those brains working, keep asking those tough questions, and keep searching for knowledge.
Because in a world that's changing so quickly, the most valuable thing you can have is a curious mind.
Couldn't agree more. This has been the Deep Dive, folks.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you.
Until next time, stay curious.
And stay engaged.
Signing off. Because ultimately, this isn't just about jets and missiles and all that hardware.
No, it's not.
It's about people, right?
At the end of the day, it always comes back to people.
It's about understanding, I guess, like the forces that shape our world.
The forces that shape our lives.
Exactly. And finding ways to navigate those forces to make smart decisions.
Decisions that'll keep us safe, keep us moving forward.
Right. And that's where you come in, dear listener.
You're a part of this too, you know?
Absolutely. This isn't just something that happens to us.
We all have a role to play in shaping the future.
And that starts with being informed.
Engaging with these complex issues, even if they seem overwhelming sometimes.
Challenging the status quo, asking those tough questions.
Yeah, don't be afraid to rock the boat a little.
So keep those brains firing, keep that curiosity alive.
Never stop learning, never stop questioning.
Because in a world that's changing faster than ever, the most valuable thing you can have is a curious mind.
Couldn't agree more.
This has been the Warp Dive.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. We really appreciate it.
Until next time, stay curious.
And stay engaged.
Signing off.